listening to Talkin' Shop.
Professors and students making sense.
Today's topic is
political polling and its accuracy.
And we're back. And today we have a couple of really special student presenters. Two students from Dr. Hannah's class, who are also students in my presidency class, along with Ed Fitzgerald from the Political Science Department. And we have a really exciting topic that we're going to discuss today. It's about a polling survey that the students actually did themselves. Now, which one of you wants to open up and start talking about this first?
I can. I am Kristen Hosey.
Okay. As is our custom on the show, you will be Dr. Hosey, because we're all doctors here on the radio show.
Great.
All right. So, Dr. Hosey, tell us about this interesting survey.
Okay. So for, like you said, Dr. Hannah's class, it's called Campaigns and Elections. We constructed a survey as a class. We took, questions from national polls, reconstructed them to fit Wright State students. We got over 380 responses on campus over 2 days of polling.
Now, let me cut in there. How do you get the responses? Like, if I start a poll, are these randomly selected individuals, and how'd you do that?
So Dr. Hannah split us up into 4 groups, and then we did 1 day of polling during our class where we went towards the more liberal arts side of campus. So we were out by Reich, we were out by Bart, Allen, and then I think between Hamilton and Reich. So we did that side of campus 1 day, and then the other day we did during our class as well, we went to the more like sciencey end of campus. So we went towards the MedSci building, Russ, the Student Union, and that's where we got our other day of polling. Then we also had online surveys. So if people were stopping by on their way to class and didn't have time, we gave them a QR code and then they did it later.
Okay, and the voice we just heard there was
Caitlin O'Connell.
Dr. O'Connell is back again. You will recognize her voice. She was here on an earlier episode with us. On a particular day, you went out to different parts of the campus. Whoever happened to be there, you just randomly kind of interviewed them? Is that the idea?
Yeah, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 11 to 12:20 is when we ran the survey. We decided not to survey on a rainier day because we didn't think as many people would be traveling above ground.
Yeah, but we would just reschedule.
What is it exactly a survey of? Does it purport to be a survey of Wright State students? Is that the idea?
Yes, it was just for Wright State students. It was basically collecting information like demographics, vote choice, interests.
Wouldn't it be better to have a comprehensive list of who are the students at Wright State, which I assume could be gotten through institutional research or whatever, and then just through a computer randomly pick a certain set of people so that you know it's an actual random selection? What I'm worried about is, actually, this is a hobby horse of mine. I don't happen to like polling methods today. What seems to happen is they work the project backward. They start off not having a random sample. They just kind of collect people and then try to make it random by throwing people out, make sure that there's meets some statistical profile. A certain people walking in this area, walking in that area, having a certain amount of age. Or talk to me about that a little bit. Talk to me about how you're comfortable that the people you have actually represent in that survey, actually represent what the student body thinks. Tell me about that.
I think part of it was just the random selection. It was just whoever was walking by we could go up to. I think we got a pretty diverse group.
I mean, in an ideal world, we do it how you did and randomly select people. But then we ran into the issue, like Dr. Hannah did wanted to get us some more responses so we could have a larger data set. And he emailed, I think, every 4th club's president and only got 5 responses from that. So it was more of a okay, if we did do that, then we'd get so few of a number that it wouldn't be worth looking at.
And that gets to the issue of the response rate, which in polling can sometimes be really, really low. I've seen responses as low as 1%. So, all right, so keep on and tell me what did you find in the poll?
Okay, we did find the vote choice among students was a clear win for Kamala Harris at 47.25%, and then Trump received 29.12%.
What do you attribute the 20% undecided to?
I think some of it's international students. We do have quite a few that took our survey, because we did have an option that, like, you were not eligible to vote because you were international, and I think we got a decent, like, at least a figure on that. And then some of it's just, especially the younger generation, there's just a lack of interest in voting.
Do you think on the undecideds that some people just might be reluctant to say they were voting for Trump? Did you see any of that hesitancy maybe in your observations of those that said they were undecided? That really they were decided, but they really weren't willing to express their preferences?
I mean, we made it pretty clear that we weren't going to watch or look at the surveys, and I don't even think I really watched anybody fill it out, because I felt like...
Well, you gave them forms to fill out. This wasn't
we gave
you
them
filling
a
out.
clipboard, and they had a
Okay,
paper form.
okay.
And then we asked them to fold over their paper and
Okay.
put it
got
in a box
got it.
so that
I
we...
thought it was weird to stare at somebody filling out a paper. So
No, I thought when you-
tried to make it obvious I was looking the other way.
Okay, okay. All right.
You are listening to Talkin' Shop. The next issue is
But professors, might there be a Trump surprise?
Is there any other indication, other than this poll, that we have about how Wright State students might feel about the election? In other words, were there any other informal, non-scientific things? And anyone do a Twitter poll? Or have there been any indication about, like, student groups? Or, I mean, I haven't seen any protests or anything. I haven't seen anything, really. I remember in 2016, let me tell you this story. In 2016, I remember a couple of things that year. I'm going to tell two quick stories. And I was teaching in an honors class for a professor. It was a gender class. I went in for a professor and did a guest lecture. I don't know what it was on, but I remember this room full of women's studies honors students, a room full of females. I don't think there was a male in the room. It's a fairly decent sized class, and it's honors class. All these kids are smart. And Bernie is running against Hillary, and everyone is talking about in the media and the Democratic organizations are talking about the first woman president and why you should be excited about that. And I went in there and asked who they wanted, Hillary or Bernie. There was only one hand for Hillary, only one. So that was 2016. Now, later on in that semester, because that was a primary, it was later in the next semester, I'm teaching the presidency. And usually there's a room full of Democrats. I'm lucky if I have one Republican, one conservative. And I remember, just for fun, asking people who they wanted to win, Trump or Hillary. In that poll in 2016, in my presidency class, Trump won. And so I'm just trying to say to you now, fast forward now, we go all the way to this point in time. Are any of you seeing anything outside of this poll which might say something about student opinion, student culture, and political preference? I personally am not seeing it in my presidency class. I don't think we have one Republican in there. I didn't take a poll on who they wanted to win. I mean, the best we can do is, there's like 3 independents. I'm not seeing it, and I'm just wondering, help me out. Are you all seeing anything? Let's go around the table on that.
One thing that I know has been discussed in some of my political science classes is a lot of people who would be voting Democrat no matter what are considering abstaining, or mostly abstaining because they're not going to vote for Trump. But, in relation to the war in Gaza right now, they're saying that, that it's really, they cannot vote for a candidate who...
Is what you're saying is that the situation in Gaza is deflating some of the Democratic interest, but they don't want to vote for Trump either for obvious reasons. Mm-hmm. So that might mean maybe less enthusiasm. Is that the argument you're saying?
Yes, that's what it seems to.
What would you say, Dr. O'Connell?
I haven't heard that specific argument. I think people on both ends of the aisle are just unenthused. I mean, I kind of get political whiplash coming from where I live to campus. Like, every house has a Trump sign. Hoorah, make America great again, like, is everywhere where I live, and then I come down here and no one would be, like, caught dead saying out loud that they're a Trump voter. And So, I mean, I find a hard time, like, just seeing both extremes of the spectrum all the time. I haven't specifically heard the Gaza argument come up in class, but maybe that's just because we take different classes. I think no one's really enthused about voting who's a moderate. If you're not on either extreme of the spectrum, you're not really interested in voting.
Did you want in on that, Ed? Are you seeing anything among the students?
Among the students, no.
No.
No. You don't see anything on campus.
Right.
You know, usually you might, maybe I don't know if it's in the past, I can't testify to it in the past, but I don't see much political behavior here on the campus.
You are listening to Talkin' Shop. The next issue is
Political polling and its accuracy.
One of the things we can do with this for a few moments is transition and talk about polling generally. What is your view about what's going on in polling and whether the polls are accurate? Some people say in 2016 they weren't accurate. Dr. Hosey, how do you come down on that?
That 2016 is a great example of why I'm a little hesitant about even following polls anymore. I mean, I thought it was interesting to try to gather what Wright State students are thinking compared to national data, but I'm not sure that that's going to tell us who is going to win elections anymore. Or
in terms of like the national polls, do you place any faith in them and what they're showing, Dr. O'Connell?
I think they're kind of a waste of time at this point. I don't know exactly what's causing it to not be accurate anymore. I think it might be a mixture of all the things, but at this point, if we're never getting an accurate poll, what's the point of spending the time and resources in taking the poll?
Ed, are the polls accurate in your mind?
I think they make an effort to be accurate. You know, the more sophisticated polls are probably, but it's only a snapshot in time. And, you know, you can't judge from the polling how the election's going to come out because many people might not even show up to vote. And so the polling is just one aspect of the dynamic of the election.
Right. I mean, what I have a little problem with, I gave a lecture on this, like there's the one problem of trying to get an accurate sample these days, a random sample, which really doesn't happen. They've got these phone lists and these generated lists. The companies have them, and some of them sell them, try to make money. It's a corporate endeavor. So some of these lists might not be exactly all that right, and from those lists, you only get a very small response rate. The other thing then comes to, they start to apply some template to say, oh, well, we have too many Democrats in this sample, so we'll throw them out, or, you know, we have don't have the right demographics here for what should be the statistical norm, and so they start messing with it so that they can therefore think they have a representative sample. And then they start to figure out who the likely voter is, and they have these likely voter screens. Their likely voter screens are usually just questions that they ask of people. You know, they ask, are you going to vote, or did you vote in the last 4 elections, and so forth. And sometimes I think it's that screen where they get most messed up on, because who ends up voting and sometimes surprises them a little bit. I don't know if you agree or disagree with that, Ed.
Well, yeah, it does. I mean, look at the polling in 2016. Hillary should have been a president, correct? The polling was not accurate at all in 2016. I'm so sure it was better in 2020 and probably more sophisticated at the moment. But again, it's only one factor that to be looked at.
What do you think, Dr. O'Connell?
I agree. It's like a lot of the meddling to make it more accurate is what ends up skewing the data and making it messed up in the first place. I think that's just kind of the world we live in, that we're never going to have someone just pick up the phone to take a poll anymore.
Yeah.
The world of cell phones, that's not how we're accustomed to living. We don't answer numbers that we don't know or whatever.
Yeah.
And you're just not going to get the samples that you want. But I think that trying to mess with them to make them correct is just adding to the problem.
One of the things that I've never liked is they think they can cure all this by averaging the numbers. And maybe that's true if all of the methods were very, very similar and they were averaging kind of like the same thing. As I look at some of these polling averages, they make the election line look really strange. The one on 538 looks really strange. It doesn't look like an election line. It never moves. And they also have these inputs that seem obviously wrong. They have like very high plus inputs, like Harris +6, Harris +8. I think most people who watch the election and who've watched a lot of elections think that this isn't going to be anything more than a +1 or +2 thing. It's the spread, most likely spread is probably going to be +2. And so they average all these high inputs, and I don't know that the polling average is doing anything other than producing a little bit of misinformation.
You are listening to Talkin' Shop. The next issue is:
Does polling help or hurt?
Well, something that I was thinking of, how the Electoral College is taken into account because it's not just popular vote that, wins the presidency. So even if polling data were completely accurate, that doesn't necessarily mean that candidate is going to win.
Right, because Hillary won the popular vote by 2.1% and still lost in the Electoral College. And Ed and I have talked about this before. I don't think a 1% spread for Harris is going to be good enough. And I could be wrong about that, but I don't think that's going to be good enough. What do you think about that, Ed?
Well, it really just depends. We seem to have been, this election's going to run down to 7 swing states, so I guess the polling in the 7 swing states are going to be what's probably most important here. Well, that raises an interesting point. I was coming to this a minute ago, and that is, do you think the polling itself is skewing and affecting the results? Not the results of the poll, but simple fact that people look at the polls now, and does that govern their behavior, as whether they vote or don't vote, as to who they might be voting for, etc.? Is that an independent variable affecting the voter itself? Regardless, we're not talking about the accuracy. We're just simply saying the fact that someone looks at this and then they judge their behavior based upon what they think polling is telling them.
I personally think that it does not. And so that's why but I think there are actors in the system who believe that it does. The perception of I'm winning, you want to be with the winner. I don't think that works at all. And in fact, I think that only leads to people being disappointed. Remember, these campaigns have their internal polls. Presumably, they're getting better information on that. One of the things that just happened was internal person in Harris's campaign, I don't know if you caught this, who was in charge of polling or familiar with the polling inside the Harris campaign. And he basically was telling people that the polls aren't accurate that you're seeing. He was telling people that. That to me is kind of interesting, that inside those campaigns they don't trust a lot of these numbers that are coming out.
There might be a bias in that. So if the poll numbers were not in your favor, of course they're not going to be accurate. Whereas if they are in your favor, you probably tend to support the accuracy of the poll.
Well, but the polls structurally have been showing Harris ahead. And so I told you that there are these strange high numbers, +6, +8, that get thrown into that 538 average. And he basically says, look, don't believe those numbers, those inputs. They're driving up that average when the truth is, and those aren't credible samples at all. Anyway, I don't know. Do you have anybody have anything?
I disagree. I think that's part of why Hillary lost. Is that, take this with a grain of salt. I was 13 when she was running for election, but I think people didn't feel an urgency to vote for her because in all the polls she was crushing Trump. So, it was inconvenient for me to go to the polls that day. Well, my candidate's going to win. Why would I go out of my way to go vote?
Yeah.
Not to raise up my old demon there of Jill Stein, I think a lot of folks voted for Jill Stein based on the very fact that you said, well, it's a free vote because Hillary's going to win anyways. And so it did influence people's behavior.
I would make this one tiny point. Remember, Trump is such an odious character that he pushes up the libertarian vote. And so the libertarian vote, there were a lot of people who said, look, I'm conservative, I'm Republican, but I can't vote for this person. What am I going to do? I'm going to be libertarian. I'm going to vote. Carville's spouse did that. James Carville's spouse, I forget her name, did that.
But we have an actual person here at the panel,
right, who knows about
husband
libertarian.
is a libertarian, so she can explain his voting behavior.
Give us some of that.
We were not together in 2016 or 2020. I do know he voted for Trump in 2020.
Okay.
He thought he really doesn't like Joe Biden. I don't know what Joe Biden does to his bones, but he really doesn't like him. I know he wouldn't been old enough to vote in 2016. 2020, he was old enough. He voted for Trump. I know that he won't commit to the Republican Party because he doesn't want to call himself a Republican. And I tell him that doesn't really affect anything, honey. We live in Ohio, but you can be registered however you want.
You are listening to Talkin' Shop. The next issue is Remaining Tidbits.
What are you all going to do with this poll? Are you going to try to publish it?
We're all each writing an individual news article of something that we found interesting in the poll. Mine was about social media news consumption and that Wright State students prefer video platform content over text platform content. So like Twitter and Facebook were really low, but Instagram and TikTok were much higher. I know some people did it on religion and vote choice. Some people did demographic, like male-female vote choice. There was a bunch of different. We're going to collectively combine them and publish them in The Guardian.
You just brought out religion. Was that something that was polled for?
Yes.
Yes.
What did you discover on the religious component then? I mean, did the Catholics go one way and the Protestants go another way? What did you find? Was there anything to be gleaned from the religious orientation of the people you were polling?
I didn't find anything significant.
As a Catholic, I know that the Pope doesn't like either of them and is encouraging people to abstain. So
Probably going to supporting Jill Stein.
I mean, I know the Pope really doesn't like Trump. but they're probably going to vote for Trump.
Here we have Dr. O'Connell has access not only to a libertarian but to the Pope. This is
Well, no, I come from a very Catholic community. I went to a public school that had religion during the school day, so I hear a lot about the things the Pope says, whether I want to or not. But
I forgot to ask, so I need to ask Dr. Hosey. What's your major?
Political science.
Oh, you're in political science, and what do you hope to do with that?
Originally, I decided to go into political science because I wanted to work within like nonprofit organizations or something just trying to help people. Since I've gotten to about the end of my my time here at Wright State, I think I've decided to go to law school to do defense.
Very good, very good. What about you, Dr. O'Connell?
that's a complicated question right now. Hopefully intelligence.
A libertarian and a CIA intelligence person, that'd be interesting. Very, very interesting.
Aren't you going to ask me what I would like to be when I grow up?
That's good.
You are listening to Talkin' Shop. The next issue is
The Ohio Senate craziness.
I'd like to go back to one of the other points that was raised about lack of enthusiasm.
Okay.
And this will feed into another issue that we discussed earlier about the Electoral College.
Right.
So in the state of Ohio, at least as far as the president is concerned, why would you be excited? I mean, we're a red state. Trump won this by X number of points last time. So we're just going to the question of enthusiasm. So if you're enthusiastic, you should be in those 7 swing states where this election will be decided. Thank you to the Electoral College. Now, if we didn't have the Electoral College, and maybe if it was more of a majority vote, people might be a little more excited because they would understand that their vote actually matters.
The one thing I would say, Ed, is it strikes me that this Bernie Moreno thing is turning into quite a catfight. And I think there is still fire there for people. I mean, I see that. I've seen that on Facebook. I've seen that on several spaces. I'm not going to name names, but I know this one colleague of mine is working going door to door, and the person's trying to tell the other Democrats, there's a big fight. We got to get Sherrod in there. So I think that there definitely is incentive in this state for folks to go render a verdict on that. The other thing I would say is remember there's empirics on this. If it's we should look and see whether voter turnout is up or down in Ohio. I would have liked to have seen a student opinion on that.
We did. We asked
Did you ask
race as
about?
well.
Did you ask about Bernie Moreno and all that?
Yeah.
How did the numbers come out the same?
Not as big, but
What was
definitely a
it?
clear win for Sherrod Brown.
Let's go around the table as one final thing here. Sherrod Brown, Does he win or lose? And most importantly, tell me the spread. Last time he won by 4 points. He ran against Renacci. I don't know whether you think Renacci was a good candidate or bad. My whole thing was I don't think he was a very good candidate at all. I'm not saying Bernie Moreno is a good candidate, but it certainly seems like a tougher opponent than Renacci was. And I'm not an expert in Ohio politics. I'm just doing the best I can. So do you think Sherrod's going to win? And what do you think the spread is going to be? Sherrod won by 4 last time. The variable here is not just the strength of the opponent and the money that's coming in to make all the noise and the voter turnout. It's also where this state is trending. Remember, we talked, Ed, about the pro-choice vote that went through, the legalization of marijuana that went through. Those were all things that Republicans didn't want. Even DeWine didn't want that. And the voters went that way. So there's that variable about where the state is trending. It's not trending. It's not necessarily trending Democrat, but it doesn't mean it's still trending Republican either. What do you think?
Well, you have this other issue on the ballot that might affect that particular race specifically. That's the gerrymandering option.
Right.
And that should get people motivated to some extent. The more people are motivated, I'd say, and if they motivated on that particular issue in favor of it, that will help Brown.
Okay,
And
that's
so
very interesting.
I'd say 2 to 3% for Brown in this race.
Okay, Dr. O'Connell, what is your prediction on that?
I think it's going to be close, whatever it is, because I'm a little nervous about it being a presidential race. Your basic informed voter who knows who's running for president and nothing else is going to go Republican coattails, down the ballot and vote for Moreno because he has R next to his name and nothing else. That would be my fear. If that's what's going to hurt Brown the most. If he does, I'm hoping he wins. So I'm going to say, yes, I think he's going to win, but I think it's going to be very, very close.
Okay, so we'll give you what, +2 or +1 in the...
I'd say +1.
Okay. So now, Dr. Hosey, what's your pick on this?
I would have to agree. I think it'll be close. I think Sherrod will probably come out on top, but I do wonder about a lot of the ads that I'm seeing from Moreno are focusing on immigration, and I just wonder how the focus on Springfield,
Right.
Trump sort of started. I wonder if that will inflame anyone's.
That's another good point.
Enthusiasm.
All right. Well, we had 2 exceptional guests here today, and I want to thank you both for coming. You both did a spectacular job. I think this idea of trying to do a poll of Wright State students was just phenomenal. I think you did a great job, and I look forward to seeing your publications in The Guardian. And thank both of you for coming.
Thank you.
You are listening to Talkin' Shop.
Professors and students making sense.